Okay, good morning. I'd like to call to order the May 19th, 2020 meeting of the Lee County Board of County Commissioners. Let's stand this morning, and I'd like to invite Danny Ballard of the North Fort Myers Fire District to say our invocation this morning.
Let's pray. Oh, dear Father, as we come to you this morning, we ask that you put your blessing, leading, guiding hand on our hearts and our head. Let us do the things that is pleasing to you in your sight. Give our county commissioners, county manager, county attorney, the staff, and the wisdom, all that they need to be able to come up with the proper ideals, the right ideals to serve this county. Please put your healing hand on all that's sick. Protect and guide all of our civil servants, all of our military. Just thank you for everything, Father. Amen.
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. All right. So this morning we have one item that I'll take directly off of our recap to handle first. This is EMS Appreciation Week, and I want to recognize the folks who have been working so hard for Lee County out there on the front lines for us, taking care of our patients on any normal day, but now especially through a pandemic. They have done heroic work. So Ben, Mr. Abus, if you'll come forward, and do you want to bring your crew with you? You're welcome to, and I'd like to read this resolution into the record. And y'all can find a, yeah. In fact, if you all want to stand back here, we'll take a picture with you afterwards, but why don't you stand up here? Good morning. It's good to see all of you here.
Yes. These are our first.
Okay. The resolution reads as follows. Whereas in 1974, President Gerald Ford authorized EMS Week to celebrate EMS practitioners and the important work they do in our nation's communities. And whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury. And whereas emergency medical services is a vital public service, and the brave men and women who serve on these teams are prepared to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And whereas this has never been more true than during the recent COVID-19 public health emergency, when the citizens of Lee County watched each and every EMS member work in heroic ways to save lives while putting their own health at risk. And whereas EMS Week brings together local communities and medical professionals to honor the dedication of those who provide the day-to-day life-saving services of medicine's front line. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Lee County, Florida proclaims this week, the week of May 17th through the 23rd, 2020, as National EMS Week in Lee County, and we encourage all citizens to show their appreciation towards the many emergency medical technicians, paramedics, and staff who dedicate themselves to protecting our community. It's duly executed this 19th day of May 2020 by me, the chairman. Congratulations, and thank you all for what you do. Commissioners, if we can join in for a picture real quick, that'd be great. We'll spread out a little bit, yeah. Dan, I'll hold this for you and then we'll give it to you. Okay, our picture taker's up top here.
I'll be the token mask.
You got your mask. Get your mask on today, Commissioner.
Thank you very much. And Ben, would you say a few words too? Thank you. would love to shake every one of y'all's hands, but we're not doing that right now. But just know, yeah, virtual handshake. Thank you.
The next time they see us, we're standing up.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the presentation of the proclamation today in recognition of the 46th Annual National EMS Week. It is an honor to receive this proclamation on behalf of EMS providers across our community, including our own Lee County Emergency Medical Services. Each EMS response this spring has only been possible due to the teamwork embodied across our organization. In addition to our EMS team, this includes our emergency medical dispatchers, supply technicians, fleet mechanics, administrative and fiscal support, and our planning partners in emergency management. It also includes responders from the county's 21 fire departments and districts. In the next day or two, our EMTs, paramedics, and field supervisors will respond to their 3,000th COVID-19 related incident since mid-February. These men and women have continued to respond to emergencies each and every day in uncertain and changing circumstances with great resolve and determination. The theme for National EMS Week is Ready Today, Preparing for Tomorrow. I am humbled to be standing here today to have the opportunity to work alongside this incredible team of professional medical responders. This team has been ready for this moment, and we are diligently preparing for tomorrow, whatever that may bring. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you to the folks who came today, but also to the folks who are out there working right now, too, who didn't get a chance to come. Good job. Okay. And turning our attention back to our agenda recap, there are two other walk-on items that we will take later in the meeting under the portion of the agenda called walk-ons and carryovers. Those items will be to adopt a resolution to approve Phase 1 of our COVID-19 recovery program proposals, and also to approve a short-term vacation rental reopening plan. And then later, our county manager is going to talk about our COVID-19 update, including things related to parks and other county facilities reopening. Okay, so moving on, at this time, we'll take up the consent agenda. The consent agenda is the first 29 items on our agenda. Do you have, Commissioner Mann, anything that you'd like to pull for discussion? Okay, Commissioner Manning, nothing? Commissioner Sandelli, anything to pull? No, Commissioner Pendergrass? And I have none that I'd like to pull. We have one public comment on item number 12 on the consent agenda. It's Danny Ballard from North Fort Myers. So Mr. Ballard, if you'll come forward and share that comment, that would be great.
Item 12 is the area there where you are going to joint venture with the Lee County School System to create a right-hand turn lane. My question was clarification. Is it a right-hand turn lane coming off of Hutto or a right-hand turn lane on Littleton in front of school going into that entrance?
Okay.
So if somebody can answer that, then I have another possible thought. I know the school district and the county and DOT, they've talked for years about taking Hutto and extending it on to the south to tie into Diplomat. And this might be the time to think about that too. That way that would take all the school buses off of Littleton because they could come in and leave the bus ramp, which is on that end of Hutto. They could do that and not interfere with Littleton at all. That might ease up where you didn't have to do the right-hand turn lane, because the right-hand turn lane that's in front of my house, which I live right next to school, that the buses use, the cars could use, and they could come in and go in that west gate, drop their children off, and go out to east gate and not have cars coming in there. Because the problem is you got cars coming in and out, and on busy days, one car parks on the side, it reduces that 2-lane down to 1 lane. That's what creates a lot of the havoc there. So there might be another thought to go in place also with that to see how much it would cost to take and go on across that. It's not a creek, all it is a drainage ditch there, because the creek turns before it gets to there, and go across and extend Hutto to Diplomat. Might be a thought process for you.
Thank you, Mr. Ballard. Appreciate your comment.
If somebody knows though on that right-hand turn lane,
Yeah.
is it on Hutto coming out?
I'll ask right now.
Going in?
Sounds good. Mr. DeGilet, do we have Mr. Searchy or anybody who would be available to talk about that?
We do, Mr. Chair, but on the agenda report, it says that for a Littleton Road turn lane. So it's from off Littleton Road.
Into the school?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, and could somebody, on your staff get with Mr. Ballard at some point after the meeting and just discuss the idea? It sounded like a good one. Okay. All right, thank you very much. Okay, so does anyone else wish to speak in public comment on items 1 through 29 on the agenda? There will be a section later where we'll talk about items that are not on the agenda, but this is items 1 through 29. Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment at this time. Do we have a motion to approve the balance of the consent agenda? We have a motion from Commissioner Manning. The second is from Commissioner Pendergrass. And Commissioner Pendergrass, go ahead.
I could recognize the Fair Board here. We have many members of the Fair Board here this morning for the Civic Center, so thank you for being here in attendance. Thank you for your service year-round.
Very good. Thank you all. Appreciate it. And I know Chief Nesbitt from Bayshore Fire was really pleased to be able to have that ceremony the other day to honor his fallen firefighters, so thank you all for helping out with that, too. Okay, very good. Any other discussion, commissioners, on the motion to approve the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, are there any objections? No objections, then that carries unanimously. All right, and let's move to the administrative agenda. Mr. DeGilet, will you introduce the first item on the administrative agenda?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Administrative item number 1, asking you to extend the grant agreement with RD Management for Merchants Crossing Redevelopment Fund. Mr. Salyer, will you please come present the item?
Good morning. Commissioners, in March, you approved a $1.7 million grant for the redevelopment of Merchants Crossing. The owner, RD Management, was to submit a development order application within 60 days. They have indicated to us that because of the COVID-19 event, they've been unable to collaborate with their consultants in such a way as to get that application finalized. So we're suggesting that we give them until the end of August to make that application.
Thank you, Mr. Salyer. And these folks are substantially located in New York as well, a lot of them, so that would make sense.
Yes, many of them are remote.
Okay, very good. All right. Does anybody wish to make a motion for the staff recommendation on this? Motion from Commissioner Manning, second from Commissioner Mann. Okay, do we have anybody, Mr. Salyer, thank you very much, anybody who wishes to speak in public comment on the Merchants Crossing extension? Okay, we'll close public comment. Any discussion on the motion? Any objections? No objections, that motion carries unanimously. Item 2, Mr. DeGilet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 2, asking you to approve acceptance of funding from the CARES Act Provider Relief Fund. These dollars are specifically allocated by the federal government to our Department of Public Safety. And Mr. Avis, will you come present the item?
Morning, Commissioners. Benjamin Avis, Public Safety. A2 is to accept funding from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services in the amount of $710,922.95. This is CARES relief money that was provided to agencies and entities that provide services to Medicare beneficiaries. The funding was received in April. That funding is designated to offset the cost of caring for those with COVID-19. It can be expended towards protective equipment, emergency staffing, and other costs associated with that care. There is no match requirement.
And so this is money that came in above and beyond the $134 million
Yes, sir.
CARES money? Yes, sir. Okay, excellent. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Avis? No? Any questions? No? All right, thank you, sir. We have a motion for approval from Commissioner Manning. We have a second. Who is the second from? Second from Commissioner Pendergrass. Very good. All right, thanks, Mr. Avis. At this time, I'll call for public comment on item number 2 on our administrative agenda related to the CARES Act. Anybody wish to speak? No? Okay, I'll close public comment. Any discussion on the motion, Commissioners? Seeing none, are there any objections? No objections, then the motion carries unanimously. All right, item number 3, Mr. DeGilet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Asking you to approve an agreement extension to serve as the Community Transportation Coordinator, and would ask Mr. Cody, please come to the podium and present the item.
Morning.
Good morning, Commissioners, County Admin. This agreement is to extend Lee Tran as being the Community Transportation Coordinator for Lee County. We have been the Community Transportation Coordinator since February 20th, and we would like to extend that for 1 year, starting July 1 through June 30th, 2020.
Okay, excellent. Any questions for Mr. Cody, Commissioners?
Just a comment, I want
Mr.
to
Sandelli, go ahead.
thank you and your team again. That was a really seamless transition, came very quickly. We have some people at risk, so congratulations and thank you for the effort.
Good deal. Any other further questions for Mr. Cody?
The item.
Okay, we have a motion for approval from Commissioner Manning. We have a second? Second from Commissioner Sandelli. All right, thanks, Mr. Cody. At this time, does anybody wish to speak in public comment on the Community Transportation Coordinator item? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Any discussion, Commissioners? All right, seeing none, are there any objections? No objections, that motion carries unanimously. All right, that concludes the administrative agenda. We have, looks like one public hearing. Mr. County Attorney, if you'll introduce that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first public hearing you have for today is a developers agreement between the county and the developers of Verdana Village. Commissioners, this is a 20-year agreement. This has been properly advertised. We provided proof of publication to your clerk. You are authorized to proceed. This is the first of two public hearings. The second public hearing will be held June 16th of this year in these chambers, 9:30 a.m. Following the conduct of this public hearing, we would respectfully request a motion to set that second public hearing. And I'm available for any questions you might have.
Do we have any questions for our county attorney? No? All right, seeing
Move the item
none.
to the second date.
We have a motion from Commissioner Pendergrass and a second from Commissioner Manning. Is the motion sufficient that you need, or do you need a date specific in there, Mr. Wesh?
Mr. Chairman, I took the motion to be a codification of my request, so that would be sufficient.
Perfect, okay, that's great. All right, at this time, I'd like to call for public comment on the Verdana Village Development Agreement. Does anybody here wish to speak in public comment on that? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment. Any discussion, Commissioners? No? Any objection? No objection, then that motion carries unanimously. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, sir.
All right. At this time, we'll move on to our walk-on agenda. And I'll turn it over to you, Mr. DeGillet, to describe the first walk-on item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, as you will recall, on March 27th, Governor DeSantis issued an executive order that effectively closed down the vacation rental properties throughout the state of Florida. That initial executive order was ultimately extended until the governor this past Friday issued Executive Order 20-123. And what that order says is that counties may apply for the opportunity to have their short-term rental properties restart their businesses. So the order to that shut them down gets lifted. One of the caveats, though, is that each county shall create a safety plan for the short-term rentals that has to be submitted to the State Department of Business and Professional Regulation and to the Secretary himself. The governor made that announcement last Friday, and the executive order was issued later in the day. Friday evening, we sent an email to the Secretary of the Business and Professional Regulation Secretary, along with a draft safety plan. That happened probably about 6 o'clock on Friday evening. Over the weekend, I exchanged several emails with the Secretary, which was really astounding. The governor said, you have to ask the Secretary for approval of the plan, and I really thought that'd go to a bunch of staff members, and that's how we'd get our communications. But in fact, it came directly from the Secretary himself. He suggested some additional language and some edits to what I had sent him. Yesterday morning, received an email from the Secretary again that said, I'll get this to you as soon as I can. And that was just one sentence. But we have not yet received approval. The department placed a page on their website that where you'll be able to see every county that has applied and every county that has been approved. We checked that website just about 20 minutes before this board meeting, and it had not yet been populated. my guess is that he's been inundated with requests, and they're working through them as fast as they can. And that really is my impression after having communicated with the Secretary several times over the weekend, is that he is moving as fast as he can to help these businesses get back up and running. So on the agenda item, have included the safety plan that we've asked the Secretary to approve. And the elements of this safety plan were taken almost directly from DBPR's suggested language that everyone uses. And so it's pretty simple. And the shortened version is, in our case, open and operate for in-state reservations only for 30 days. And so they can't take reservations from out of state or from areas of Florida that are considered the hotspots. That provision could be extended by an additional 30 days if the county commission deems that to be in the best interest of the people of Lee County. It should prohibit rentals to persons traveling internationally or from a state or locality that with substantial community spread of COVID-19. Shall allow adequate time between the conclusion of a guest stay and the check-in of the next guest stay for appropriate cleaning and sanitation. The property shall clean and disinfect all frequently touched surfaces in the property between each guest stay, and they have to shall wash linens, dishware, and such between guest stays as well. Shall provide sufficient soap and surface sanitation supplies for guests to utilize while they're during their stay. And then the properties shall ensure adequate safety protocols are in place and publicly displayed in line with the CDC guidance. And we included a link for these properties to use that goes right to CDC guidelines for cleaning and disinfecting. So that. Mr. Chair, unless the board has questions, we'd ask for your approval.
Okay, very good. So the bottom line on this, Mr. County Manager, is Lee County is putting forward their safety plan to try and get our vacation rentals reopened. And we have had communication with the Department of Business and Professional Regulation. We do not have the approval yet, but if we get approval, we'd like to allow them to begin accepting guests as early as May 20th, 2020?
As early as tomorrow.
And if the approval comes later than that, we would make the effective date, I guess, just immediately upon
Yes,
approval?
sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
very good.
So the motion, if you're so inclined, is to approve this item contingent upon the Secretary of DBPR approving the safety plan.
Okay, very good. Do we have somebody who wishes to make that motion? Commissioner Sandelli makes the motion. Commissioner Pendergrass seconds it. Okay. Do we have any questions for our county manager? No? Oh, yeah, Commissioner Sandelli.
And I know this has been a very active issue in the community and very important. And I want to thank Roger and his staff for the work last week. Our intent was to get something, in for approval as quickly as we could, with the hope that we get an answer as quickly as we could, that we can move this along. So I think we've done everything that we could. All we need is that stamp of approval, and I think we'll be good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
What other questions or comments do we have for our staff? None? All right, at this time, I'll call for public comment on the motion that's on the floor related to vacation rentals and the safety plan. Does anybody wish to speak on that? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment. Commissioners, any further discussion on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. Are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. All right, thank you, Mr. DeGillet, and keep us up to date on when we get that approval.
Just as quickly as we get it, I'll send you an email.
Excellent. Okay. And the next item? You want to do the Phase 1 COVID-19?
Yes.
Let's do it.
See, this is if you check with all of the senior team and some other members of the staff, and if you ask them the question, are you confused today? The answer you're going to get is probably yes. It's the amount of work that's been done just in the last 5 or 6 days on these issues has gotten to be just almost overwhelming. But so I'm going to ask Mr. Salyer to come to the podium and take you through the work that's been done around the conversation we had last week, which you'll recall was to allocate $50 million for personal assistance, business assistance, and some other categories here. So can I ask Mr. Salyer to go through the presentation? And again, Commissioners, if you have questions somewhere within the presentation, please feel free to just let us know, and we'll answer them as best we can.
Thank you, Mr. Desjardins. Good morning again, Commissioners. Glenn Salyer, County Manager's Office. As the County Manager just indicated, we've spoken quite a lot over the last couple of weeks about the CARES Act and the many different sources of funds going to different entities, how much, what they can be used for, et cetera. So today, we're really here just to talk about the implementation of the programs that you approved in concept last week. And as a recap, you have allocated $20 million for individual assistance, and you've allocated an additional $30 million for various kinds of business and child care support programs, which we'll get into momentarily. In fact, we'll just jump right into the individual assistance piece. Again, the $20 million pot of funds. This would be available to help Lee County residents pay rent, mortgage, water, and electric utilities. We would allow up to $2,000 benefit per household, and I want to just reiterate that these payments would be made directly to the vendors. So people aren't at home waiting for a check after they've applied for these funds, but rather the payments go right to the landlord or the utility. The income guidelines that we've designed would qualify households with income of $55,000 or less at the time of application. So it doesn't really matter what you made last year. It depends on your current situation. If you've been impacted by the COVID-19 event to such an extent that your income has fallen below those levels, you would qualify. We are building an online application. It will be available across all different devices. It's responsive, meaning that if you have a mobile device, even on your phone, you can apply that way. So you don't have to be in front of a computer. And of course, on the individual assistance side, we will also offer a paper drop-off option so that if someone just doesn't have access to the internet, they can drop that off and we will enter it into the system for them. And we are standing up a call center that will allow us to assist applicants and answer questions about this program. That's all I have. I'd like to answer your questions on this one before we move on.
Real quick on this side? No? Real quick, Commissioner Mann has a question, and I'll come back to this side. Commissioner Mann, go ahead.
The issue just kind of overwhelms me. I'm trying to figure out how it's going to work, and maybe y'all got the secret plan already devised here, but the applicant who's eligible for the rent or mortgage help and the water and electric has to make the application, but the request for the money has to come from the landlord or Florida Power and Light or the water company. It seems very cumbersome. And how does this message get out to those eligible and say, okay, all you guys out there with a household income under $55,000, you can apply for these three things, but you can't get it. It's going to go to somebody else. How is this? We're doing a wonderful thing here, but how does the world know? How do these people that could be the beneficiaries know? It seems very cumbersome.
Commissioner Mann, you essentially have that process correct. It's the individual that applies for the benefit. The vendor, whether
he's going to find out about this how?
So we will be publicizing this through all of our communications platforms. We'll be on TV. I suspect this will even hit radio. It'll be on the internet, of course, our websites, or across social media. We'll publicize it heavily through the Human Veteran Services Department. And I think to further answer your question, we are using a process that is already in place. That is how our current assistance programs work. We've simply modified the process a little bit. We've expanded the eligibility so that the income level is a little bit higher per household. But this is the process we use today. And what happens is the individual applies for the benefit, the vendor registers with the county, and we make payment directly to them. So it's not as cumbersome as it probably sounds
if I'm the resident, do I have to call the power company or the water company or my landlord if it's rental so that they know I'm applying for this? But they'll know that somehow?
The applicant would contact their landlord or mortgage company. It's not as important on the utility side. In fact, Pam Keys has already reached out to the area utilities to let them know that this program is going into effect, make sure they're registered as vendors with the county so that they can receive these payments. It should be a fairly seamless process.
Well, and I'm not following exactly what you're suggesting that this is the way we already do it, but this is a new program based on the virus and its impact and the new people that it has touched. So the folks that are being affected here or being eligible, they haven't been utilizing this process. So that's why it's critically important. Well, you ticked off a number of ways that the folks are hopefully going to hear about this, but this is like so much else involved with the response to the coronavirus. That we're making these rules up as we go along, and these are some do-good efforts on our part. I just want to make certain that the folks that this is designed to help understand it adequately so they can take advantage of it. And I'm sure that's top in your mind and your staff all the way through this.
Yes, sir, it is. The communication staff is working hard on a plan that, again, spans all those media types. We know we have to get the word out to a bunch of new potential customers, if you will, so point well taken.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, let's go with Commissioner Sandeli first. and
I'll
then-
wait till the presentation's done, because the comments I have are kind of all.
Okay, Commissioner Pendergrass?
Glenn, thank you for the great presentation. So our current human services, what we do practice now with the vendor applicant process, what's the turnaround now? If someone applies on a Monday, what's the turnaround before FP&L is compensated for that bill? Based on what we currently do now, it's just going to be new money coming into the current system.
That's a good question, Commissioner. I know we've talked about this, and I'm not sure off the top of my head that I can remember well enough to answer. I think when we say allow up to 4 weeks, but I may be wrong on that. Let me get back to you. I will tell you what we're doing here is we are standing up a big call center and processing facility. Right. Probably almost 50 people will populate that effort. We are trying to turn these around much faster than we would in the normal course of business.
Well, I'm asking because some people may already be behind their bills because of what's happened in the last 4 to 6 weeks. They may be incurring some late fees now, like FP&L or water bill, even mortgage. Will this assistance be able to help them with those late fees too, or will they incur more late fees if this takes longer to get the funding?
This program would assist for both past due and current bills. Okay. So we would work with the vendors on that piece, trying to avoid those kinds of extra costs.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Sandel?
I will make a comment. I attended part of the training class yesterday that putting this team together. They have over 100 people, I believe, in this, from call takers to people that are, taking care of the request to oversight, so that people don't get lost in the system, so to speak. So it's our one organization. It was a great example of that. So thank you. I think we're doing every effort to make it as clean, simple, and as expeditious as possible.
Excellent. Thanks, Commissioner Sandeli. And so just the bottom line to clarify then, because I know we've got a lot of questions that were asked here today. So you did have a model to follow for this program and creating it, and that model was the mortgage, rent, and utilities assistance program that our Human Services and Veteran Services Department has been using for years with a program like this?
Yes, sir, that's right. We simply took that process and modified it for this particular.
Okay, so while this is a new and bigger program for us, the model is something that we're familiar with, and actually it's something that people in Lee County have taken advantage of in the past too.
Yes, sir.
Correct. Okay, very good. All right, well, thank you. That helps me understand that. Commissioner Pendergrass?
Glenn, also, like, we're working with a lot of other groups, like the United Way and other groups, the food banks and stuff. So that information will be provided to them too. Also, they can provide that to their visitors that come to the food banks and United Way for contacts, correct?
Absolutely, yes, sir. In fact, Janine Joy is here today. I'd like to recognize her and all the effort that United Way is putting into this. We communicate regularly with 211 so that they can get the word out along Commissioner Mann's lines as well, yeah.
Great, thank you.
And so you kept the eligibility standards and things very similar to what the United Way would be used to communicating out to clients then?
We've made this very streamlined in the sense that it's $55,000 a year or less of household income at the time of application. So there's only one message to convey in that regard.
Excellent. Okay, very good. So the goal is to get it out there quickly. Yeah, Mr. Dejolet, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, Glenn, will you please talk for just a moment about the web-based software product we'll be using? Because one of the questions has been, well, if we get too many applicants at once, will the system crash? So people need to know that that's about the process we're using.
Yes, sir. We have identified a third-party vendor, a platform called Neighborly, that has been successfully used by some of our sister jurisdictions to process these types of programs. It is a hosted solution, meaning it is on their servers. In fact, it's not even really their servers. They're on Microsoft servers, so they're in a huge data farm somewhere. They tell us they can scale to many, many more users than we would ever have. So we should be good.
Excellent. So real quick then, before we move on from the individual assistance commissioners, does everybody have their questions answered on the individual assistance side? Okay, very good. All right, thanks, Mr. Sire.
Thank you. Okay, on to the business assistance piece, and here we have the 3 programs that we discussed last week. I'll begin with the business relaunch program. You've allocated $25 million for that. These are $5,000 financial assistance grants made to small businesses with 25 employees or fewer. They are also businesses that were closed by the governor's Safer at Home Act. And when we say closed, that could either be closed entirely or significant pieces of their operation. So think, for instance, restaurants that had to go to curbside-only service. They would qualify for this grant program. The intention here is to allow them to cover operating expenses that aren't readily addressed by other funding sources, such as PPP loans and other programs available. So, for instance, you want to expand your outdoor seating per the resolution that the board adopted, or rather the order that the county manager adopted, allowing restaurants to establish additional seating. They could use the money for that. They could use it for marketing, insurance premiums, PPE, a whole host of operating costs. Again, we will use the Neighborly platform to process these applications. That's that third-party hosted solution. We're also standing up a call center here again. That will be in the Administration East building, so that all applications for the business piece do have to be online. But if somebody doesn't have access to the internet for some reason, they can call, make an appointment, and we will walk through it and fill it out for them online. I think with that, I'd take any questions, Mr. Chair.
What questions do we have, commissioners, on the business side? No? Okay.
So commissioners, just want to emphasize one point here. Glenn's mentioning we're standing up another call center. So the number of employees that we have dedicated to these 2 call centers is just slightly over 100. They are existing employees that are getting their training yesterday and today, I think, right? Or did they finish yesterday?
No, we'll be training all week.
Training all week, sorry. So they'll, when these centers open up, we'll absolutely be ready.
Very good. When you're going to be training all week, do you have a potential launch date to go live with this?
We do. That's at the end, unless you want me to jump.
Oh, well, I don't spoil the ending.
Yeah, right. The big reveal, right.
Spoiler alert.
Very good. All right. Thanks, Mr. Sire.
Very good. Thank you. So moving then to the child care support piece, here you've allocated $3.5 million to the effort, and this is twofold. One, we would provide scholarships to needy families that are trying to get their children placed in one of the Gold Seal providers. This is a DCF designation for providers that meet particularly high standards. The United Way will work with those providers as well as their partner agencies and the municipalities to process these applications. Again, Ms. Joy is here, and she and I have talked about this a few times already, and we've got a little bit more work to do. But essentially the way that works is you go to the provider, make application to get a space allocation. We provide a supplemental, very simple one-page form. The United Way qualifies you and then disperses the scholarship. The other piece to the child care support is the personal protective equipment. Here we would supply disinfectant gloves, masks, and hand sanitizer to the Gold Seal providers. We would also try to contract for deep cleaning services at their individual sites. I'm pleased to tell you that the Emergency Management Logistics Group has already been able to contact all of the providers on our list, and with your go-ahead today, we will begin distributing the PPE as early as Thursday. Any questions about this piece?
What questions do we have about the child care piece, guys? No? Everybody good? All right, thanks, Mr. Salyer. So this is, again, following a model that's already in place with the United Way with their scholarship program. And
It does follow their existing model. Again, we have to modify it to certify that these are COVID-19 related expenses so that we can create the audit trail that we need for U.S. Treasury, but it does follow their model.
okay, and then, it'll be easy to find this information on our website, or how will people find it if they hear about it on the news?
Yes, sir, it'll be on our website. It'll, I believe, be on United Way's website, 211, et cetera, and all of our call centers will have the information as well.
Excellent. Okay, very good.
Okay. All right, that brings us to the PPE Supply program. You've allocated $1.5 million to this effort. Here, we're trying to supply small businesses that are in particular industry sectors that are very high-intensity contact-oriented with masks and hand sanitizer in particular. We do have some gloves available. We're trying to source disinfectants as well. So each applicant will get a package consisting of some mix of those products. We talked a little bit last week about the difficulty in sourcing this kind of material. It is tough, but clearly we have a lot more buying power than a very small company. We have vendor relationships where we can that we can leverage. Even that's not foolproof. We had a 2 million glove order that we thought was on its way, and we found out just yesterday, in fact, it's been canceled and not going to arrive at all. So this is a volatile market, but our procurement department is doing a really good job of sourcing many of these items from different places, and so we will be ready to launch with the other programs and start dispensing these materials. The great thing is the Supervisor of Elections is making the Election Center on South Cleveland Avenue across from Bell Tower Park available for distribution, which is a nice central location. It's got dock high warehouse we can use, nice big parking lot, long entryways for cars to queue. So we thank the supervisor for that. Again, this will be an online application. This one is hosted by a different third party, but again, it's responsive, so you can apply on your phone. It's scalable so that no matter how many people hit this application, it should not present a problem.
Very good. What questions do we have, Commissioners? No? Okay, very good. Mr. Salyer, one thing I just want to, kind of to wrap all this up, these are programs that are meant to help out folks and businesses who, through no fault of their own, have suffered tremendous setbacks because of this pandemic. And these programs they're one-time in nature. They're not meant to be recurring assistance programs for the county. Is that correct? I mean, this isn't going to, this ends with the pandemic. This isn't forever, correct?
That is correct. Once the money has been exhausted, we would close the applications, and that's it.
Okay, very good. All right, very good. All right, thank you, Mr. Salyer. Does that conclude your presentation? Okay.
Just a little bit more, Commissioner. So, for instance, you'll be able to go to our website and see the qualifying industries for the PPE program. This is very specific NAICS codes that, again, are high-intensity contact businesses. Just to give you a little bit more background on what has been done to date, since our conversation last week, we have designed the assistance parameters for these programs. We've put in place eligibility criteria. We've created program applications. We've evaluated and selected the technology platforms that we've talked about here this morning. We're still configuring those platforms. The workflows have to be designed. The approval paths have to be enshrined in the technology platforms themselves. We've designated the workspaces. We're using the downtown Fort Myers Library, the Administration East Building, and like I said, the Election Center on Cleveland Avenue. We're still fitting those up and getting them ready. We have identified the staff that the county manager talked about, and I'm pleased to say training is already underway for the Business Relaunch program, the Individual Assistance program, and the PPE training will start most likely on Thursday of this week. So things still to do. We just talked about the training piece. We just talked about configuring the technology platforms and building out the web portal, which is the consumer interface where you make your application. We're finalizing fiscal procedures. Want to thank the clerk's office there as well. They're going to be a huge part of this. Clearly, we still have to secure additional PPE supplies, finish, like I said a moment ago, finish staging the physical workspaces, and execute those communication plans that we talked about earlier. And then finally, we are, of course, evaluating additional community needs that might be parts of future assistance phases, to include what you asked us to do last week, which is talk to food banks and other folks just to assess where we are in terms of food security. Are there gaps that we potentially need to cover? And we would formulate recommendations to bring back to you in that regard. Just a real quick, again, another allusion to the number of people involved in this program. It's already been discussed, but we have mobilized well over 100 county employees for these programs. They come from a whole host of departments. You can see them there. We're pretty proud of this. Clearly, the community stands as one community clearly in an event like this, and we do too as an organization to serve them. And so a big thanks from all of us to all of these county employees working so hard. Regarding transparency and oversight of these programs, we had talked about using an established advisory committee to help us here. We're suggesting that we use the Executive Regulatory Oversight Committee. We would report to them every other month on who's been served, what the processing times are, what the financial situation is, how much money has been dispersed for each program, and how much is remaining. We would also post monthly reports to our website, and of course, we intend to give you an update at every county commission meeting.
Would we get the same reports that you're talking about given to EROC?
Yes, sir. We would forward those to you as well. And then finally, we're suggesting that these programs can launch on Tuesday, May 26. That would be all programs across the board. You can see there what we're talking about doing on the individual assistance and business relaunch grants is using rounds of application windows, so that the first one would open on the 26th and stay open through the entire week. We would then be processing those in the background throughout that period, and assuming that we have some funds available after that round, the second one would start on June 1st. For the PPE program, we would simply open this up on the 26th and keep that application live until all of our supplies are exhausted. And then, of course, on the child care assistance piece, the United Way would be processing those applications for us. That's all the information, Commissioners. I know it's a lot to tackle, but we appreciate your guidance and leadership on this, and we do have a resolution that we would need you to approve.
So the resolution covers all of this?
It covers these programs, yes, sir.
Okay, very good.
That's what- Say, Glenn, thank you. What a great presentation. Very transparent, and it's great to see all the county employees coming on, all hands, like Roger said before, all hands on deck here, and we all came together as an organization, and I hope we're going to help a lot of people here in Lee County. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Commissioner Sandelli?
Yes, I also thank you. I think it bugged you guys enough this past week trying to work through this. I wanted to readdress this a little bit differently. I want to thank the staff for all the time they gave me in researching this and what they were looking at. I also took a look at all of the input that we had externally. I read them all, tried to see where the focus was and so on and so forth, and then you kind of put it all together. I kind of think in terms sequentially. Maybe that's from flying airplanes. You always had a checklist, down thing. And so when I looked at this, I thought, the first thing is that a lot of folks have been hurting for quite a while now. And so I think if we can make sure that people have access to food, that childcare is a very important part of that, and shelter. If we can get the people stabilized, I think in those major categories, they're better prepared to go back to work. And I know that employers are struggling with getting people back in and getting engaged for the number of reasons. So what I proposed was I looked at the $20 million for the rent, mortgage, utilities, and as I think we all know, people are probably a little bit behind on that. So I kicked that to $22 million. Okay, the $25 million for business I'm fine with. Childcare, to me, is critical in getting people back to work. And so I took the $3.5 million to $4.5 million, put an extra $1 million into that. PPE, I think, is going to be a challenge as we opened up to a variety of different organizations and so on forth. And the product, as you said before, is hard to come by. It's going to be more expensive because of demand. So I brought that from $1.5 million to $3 million. And then I put a separate line item for the pantries and stuff of $3 million. You add that together, it's a $7.5 million increase over the $50 million, roughly 15%. To me, it's front-end loaded a little bit. And the numbers are fluid, I understand that. But I think the more people we can touch earlier, openings seem to be going well. The numbers seem to be coming down, as the chairman has shared numerous times, and so on and so forth. So I'm encouraged that we're moving in the right direction. And again, I think by front-end loading this a little bit by 15%, $7.5 million, I think we can get more done a little bit quicker and for consideration.
Okay.
Is that a motion?
So would your motion be to approve the staff's recommendation, but with the suggested increases that you have outlined?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner
Second.
Sandelli, and the second is from Commissioner Pendergrass. Okay. Before we get into any questions on the motion real quick, because I want to take public comment too at some point.
Mr. Chairman, I would simply like to thank Commissioner Sandelli for his extra work on this, and particularly for including the food banks. Mr. Chairman, I thought that you had clarified at our last meeting that that was to be considered with the recommendation brought to us back by staff, and maybe that wasn't clear, but this does make it clear, and I appreciate his attention to that. So it's a great motion. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Pendergrass?
And just for clarification, that'd be a total of $57.5 million, correct?
Yes, sir.
And we still have the extra funding, so when the second wave comes through, or third wave of the phase, then we'll still have money for that. So
Yes,
I know there's probably one person concerned about where the $134 million total is, but we'll be using that throughout the year because it's good till December, correct?
Yes, sir. The balance of the $134 million will be held in reserve, and you can appropriate additional dollars as need be.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Very good. All right. Then at this time, thank you, Mr. Salyer. I'm sure you'll be available for questions as well. Let's move into the public comment portion. So you've all seen the presentation on these specific CARES Act dollars. So let's keep our public comments to the motion that's on the floor, to what we're talking about. And at this time, well, I've got a lot of cards that people turned in about a bunch of different issues, but I think the chickens and the homeless issues, those will be more for the public comment at the end of the agenda on things that were not on our agenda today. But raise your hand. Do you wish to speak in public comment on the CARES Act item? Let's do it that way. Okay, I got a few hands. All right, I'm gonna go from left to right. How about that? Let's start with the far left, ma'am. Yep, you had your hand raised. So why don't you come on over, and then we'll raise our hands again, and we'll figure out how to get through this. And be ready on the. So as she's coming up for public comment, I'll remind you all of the rules for public comment. We have what looks like a stoplight here up on the top of the podium. It's got a green light, a yellow light, and a red light. It's 3 minutes. And when the yellow light comes on, that's when it's time to start thinking about wrapping up, because when the red light comes on, in order to be fair to everybody, I'll go ahead and call the next speaker. So, good morning.
Good morning. My name is Jasmine Miller, J.D. Before I start, I will tell you about the Bible. Isaiah 65:21. I took it from jw.org. They will build houses and live in them, and they will plant vineyards and eat their fruitage. Yes, homeless will do this someday. If not in our lifetime, when Jehovah comes and brings us into the paradise earth. Now, I'd like to tell you this. Please allot the money from the CARES Act that you're going to give to the homeless according to their needs. I would like to ask you to put it in trust. And the homeless nation, we're in the process of gathering a group of us who will seek trustees, and the trustees will be in charge of the money, and you're going to treat it the way special education use the money for each individual child in special education, according to their needs. Get an input directly from the homeless child. Yes, The homeless children belong to Jehovah. There is children and they're in trust. They place them in your hands to make sure they are taken care of. So please do not spend your money. Do not give their money to any more homeless shelter. Give it to the homeless trustees. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments this morning. All right, who else had their hand up over on this side, on the left side of the room? All right, sir, go ahead. And if you'll just remember to state your name for the record.
David Gallagher, and it's hard to wait until the very end, but I didn't see martial arts up there on that list, so I want to make sure that it's also deemed essential, because I'm not sure if you're not on the list, but it was quick that if we call like a yoga studio or a martial arts studio, that we are really super close to each other. We can keep a certain distance, but I mean, some classes you're not going to be able to do right away. Grappling classes, you know, that's face-to-face. And I would think that would be one that you would probably bow out for a little bit longer. And so if somebody calls like me and we're looking for assistance and I'm not on that list, what happens? Who deemed that list would be my question. Who decided on what's essential, what's not essential? I mean, is, you know, alcoholic aspect versus a yoga studio? Who's deciding that? And so I need to know who decided on the list, and if we're not on the list, how do we get on the list? Or if anybody that's not on the list, how do they get on the list? Or is it for all? And back to the income, for just because it was just something that flew in my mind. On the income, if somebody already makes $54,000, for instance, are they deemed, you know, right off the bat, are they going to get this even though that was their current status? And if they're getting unemployment, if they're getting special programs as well, are they also eligible for this? So I'm talking about two things. So the business side, who's eligible? And if you're not on that list, how can we get on that list? And personally, if you are somebody that was making $150,000 and now you're making $55,000, obviously you should be eligible. But if you're only making, if your normal income is $52,000 at that point, and then you got unemployment up until July, I think they're getting an extra $600 through the government, and let's say you're getting, you know, that's another $800,000, $900,000. You're looking at $1,000 a week right there. Are they also eligible for this on top of it? And let's say they have welfare on top of that. I'm just saying these broad numbers are a little scary. I mean, because and my business has been closed for 2 months. And yeah, restaurants are doing bad in a sense, but they are making money where I'm not making anything. So I'm totally closed, and they've been generating money. So I would think that you would allow us first. There'd be a line. Who's not able to work, you're in line first. Who's making some money, you're second. And who's not been affected, like a Walmart or something so much, they go to the end of the line. So I know that's it. Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Gallagher. All right, very good. And when we get to the end, I'll go ahead and ask Glenn if he'll answer some of those questions, all right? Thanks. All right, let's see. The next hand I see is right here, and then we'll get to you, Angela.
Yes, thank you. Again, I'm with St. Martin de Porres for a food pantry. And I thank Commissioner Sandelli for mentioning there about the food pantries as also needing support in addition to the food banks, because like the food banks, we also have to purchase food and other items there. So thank you for bringing that up, because that was one of my questions. That's what we're going to do. The other thing, too, is regarding the personal protection equipment there. Obviously, that I didn't see the food pantries and other things which for the personal protection equipment, because obviously it's difficult for us to get it as well, and we do direct as much as anybody else that's up there in terms of the with a direct contact. So we also need the gloves, the mask, and everything else. So I'm hoping that is going to be added on to the thing as well. So And also, too, we're serving a lot more people from different areas because of the other pantries being closed. So I'm hoping that all pantries get this kind of assistance, because they also are directly affected by it. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments this morning. Ms. Melvin?
Thank you so much. Angela Melvin, CEO and founder of Valerie's House, a local nonprofit here. First of all, thank you for your hard work. I said to Brian yesterday, it's easy to judge from the sidelines until people are in your position, and I think you're doing a phenomenal job on carrying our community through. I would never want to live anywhere else and would never want to have a business anywhere else, and I'm very proud of Lee County. I represent Valerie's House, which is a 501c3 nonprofit. We serve grief and bereavement, families who have had a loss, particularly the death of a parent or sibling for a child. And I also represent all nonprofits today. I didn't know if nonprofits were included in the business relaunch grants, so hopefully you can answer that question. If not, this first wave, that you strongly consider nonprofit organizations, they are businesses. And I'm sure you've read and heard over and over again how detrimental this has been to all of us. Many of us, like Valerie's House, have seen a decrease in funds, but yet an increase in need. And that's where bereavement care and grief are not necessarily on the front line, but we're second and third line. The families that are dying and passing away, Valerie's House is seeing those family members come to us with nowhere else to turn, oftentimes not even the opportunity to go to a funeral right now. Whether you died from COVID-19 or cancer or a car accident, which is still happening daily, families are coming to us in great stress and anxiety. So it asks that you consider nonprofits for a part of this business relaunch grant program, and that you also consider grief and bereavement as maybe not necessarily front line, but right behind that as an absolute need in this community. And thank you so very much.
Ms. Melvin, very good. All right, so real quickly, everybody on this side of the room who wanted to speak has gotten a chance to on this specific topic? Okay, very good. Let's move to this side of the room. Let's go with you in the back, and then I'll go to you next. And if you'll remember to say your name for the record. Thanks.
My name is Ethel Powell. Good morning, and thank you. I stood to speak on behalf of the beauty salons and barbershops in the area. They are small businesses. Many of them, especially in the East and Dunbar area, the way they're set up, they don't have employees. They just rent their different stations out to the operators. And so far as I know, the ones that I've spoken with, they haven't really qualified to get any assistance from anybody, yet they were required to close down. They had no money coming in because if the operators can't work, they don't pay the owners, and if the owner is renting or has a mortgage, they can't pay that. So they haven't received any assistance. In regards to the $5,000 grant, I would like to speak to someone or get a number to find out if they qualify for that. They have no employees, and most of these grants, they say rehire your employees or whatever, but they don't have employees. So I would like to speak to someone or get a number where I can call to find out how they can qualify to get the grants, because I do think some of the money should be allocated to go to the East area or Dunbar, because and they're not here. I guess they're working. None of them came. I guess they're working. So I would like to get a number or a person to talk to and just help them out to qualify for that $5,000 grant, because it seems like they don't qualify for it. But if I can speak to someone to get a number.
We'll get you set up with that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, absolutely. All right, ma'am. Morning.
Morning. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Susan Block. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Early Learning Coalition of Southwest Florida. And I want to thank you for your consideration of this plan to stand up childcare. The Early Learning Coalition is part of a statewide network. We receive the majority of our funding from the Office of Early Learning, and we provide the regular childcare subsidy and funding for voluntary pre-kindergarten. all of which has been affected, like everything else, during this pandemic. The need is extraordinary, and we see the need on a daily basis as our families call looking for help, as our providers call looking for help. In a usual economy, childcare would be standing us all up, allowing families to go to work, making sure that employers have their employees on a regular basis, and now more than ever. Over the course of the last 8 weeks, we've been following closures over the four-county area that we serve, and we're seeing a very slow comeback of our child care providers. They too are small businesses, and I imagine since you've qualified them as able to apply for PPE, that you'll be seeing applications from our smaller child care providers who are really struggling with that. Families getting back to work, you all know, for those that have been sheltering at home without an income or maybe on unemployment for the last 2 months, getting started is going to be difficult, and paying those bills that have been mounting up, tremendous. So having a shot in the arm, a one-time boost for childcare in the way that it's been envisioned by the county staff and by United Way is a tremendous, tremendous, powerful thing to do for the families of Lee County, and I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for your support and consideration, and a special shout out to the county staff and to our partners at United Way who have just been working around the clock to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very good. And who else on this side had a comment on the CARES Act dollars and the programs we outlined? Okay. All right. Seeing no hands, no further hands, then I'll go ahead and close public comment at this time. I want to turn back to our staff real quick because I think there were a couple good questions that were asked. And Mr. DeGillet, if we could start with answering some of those questions. For instance, that the martial arts business that was discussed, if it was a business that was completely closed, I think those are the folks we're looking to help, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Hammond. I do think the martial arts business falls squarely in the camp that qualifies for the Relaunch grant. Probably for the PPE as well. We would consider that an other recreational industry, so I think the gentleman is qualified. Our Economic Development Director, John Talmadge, would want me to also remind everybody that there is still funding available for the SBA PPP loans. Our grant is a complement to that, and so if they haven't tried that avenue yet, they might want to, and certainly they can call our call center and we can help.
Commissioner, on that issue, the gentleman talked about whether essential or non-essential list of businesses. Essential versus non-essential does not play a role in this program. It is about, for business assistance, 20 employees or less. And then for personal assistance, it's about their income level at the time that they apply. As he mentioned, somebody may make $150,000 a year, but because of the pandemic, they may be only making $40,000 a year right now. At the time they apply, if they're making $55,000 or below, they would qualify.
Okay. And then, do you want to touch on the idea of I think, you could just refer to it as double dipping, though. Would somebody be able to, on the individual assistance side, be able to get all of the different benefits?
Commissioner, if we take all of those different income streams into account when we qualify you. So if you are on unemployment and you have child care support or whatever coming in, child support, excuse me, all that gets aggregated. We add that up. So if your income is still less than $55,000, you qualify.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And Commissioners, and you will receive requests for lots of different categories. And we just always have to remember that the guidance that we've received so far from Treasury is that these must be COVID-related expenses not otherwise budgeted for. So they have to be a direct result of the pandemic, the virus pandemic.
Okay, very good. All right, commissioners, did you have one more point you wanted to?
You want me to go through the list of questions or just take them?
Well, I think you hit all the questions I had. Did we have any other questions, commissioners, for Mr. Salyer at all? Commissioner Pendergrass?
The tourism market, obviously, hotels and restaurants been hit, but some of the small mom and pop motels, hotels, t-shirt shops, they'd also be qualified for this too, correct, under the retail version of the business?
Commissioner, they would have had to have been closed by the Safer at Home Act.
Even though they had less rooms rented because of the virus?
That would not qualify, no, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just one clarification on the 501c3s and charity corporations. They're okay, aren't they? Eligible like anybody else?
Yes, sir. If I may, let me just run down the list of questions I heard, that being one of them.
Yes.
Okay.
So 501c3 organizations that were closed by the Safer at Home Act with fewer than 25 employees absolutely qualify. Again, the 25 employee threshold is something that all of our sister jurisdictions are using. That's how we're qualifying these companies. There's a number of reasons for that we can go into if you want to discuss it further. The beauty and nail salon question absolutely qualifies for both the Relaunch grant and the PPE program. And then the last thing that I noted was the question about the food security needs. I just want you to know that we are collecting and analyzing data from Midwest and Harry Chapin, talking to other people as well, trying to identify those gaps that exist. It could be supply, but it's also cold storage, it's PPE, as you heard here today. So there's a number of facets to all of that.
Mr. Chair, with regard to the food pantries, yesterday, I think you all received some of the same emails I did from a nonprofit, the Interfaith Charities of South Lee County, and asking about their eligibility for dollars for assistance, and also to allow them to buy food for the area that they serve. I spoke with the executive director this morning, and so we'll add them to the list of the food pantries we're talking with.
Excellent. Okay, very good. What other questions do we have, or any further discussion on the motion that was on the floor? Okay, and just to restate, the motion on the floor is from Commissioner Sandelli, and it's the staff recommendation with amendments as he outlined earlier. It was seconded by Commissioner Pendergrass. We've held public comment. Any further discussion? All right, then I'll go ahead and call the question. Are there any objections to the motion on the floor? Okay, seeing none, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you all for the hard work on that. That's going to help out a lot of people, and we know that like anything, it'll have a little trial and error at first, but we know that the intent is to help out a lot of really good people, and so thank you all for that.
Commissioner Zinn, thank you for your approvals today.
Very good, thank you. All right, let's see. Does that cover all the walk-ons, Mr. DeGillet?
I think it does.
I believe it does, because we've got vacation rentals and we got that. All right. So that covers the walk-on and carryovers. And we'll come back to you under county manager items to discuss more county facilities.
Yes, sir.
And different openings then related to the full Phase 1 reopening.
Yes, please.
Okay, so at this time, let's move to commissioner items. Commissioner Mann, do you have any?
One item that I want to talk about is getting the chicken issue on our blue sheet agenda. I don't know whether it's appropriate now, or perhaps when there's people here to speak on the issue, I could take it up at that time.
I'll take their comments now then, if that's it. So Mr. DeGillet, let me ask that question, or maybe for our county attorney, either one can choose. Does he need a motion to put it on a blue sheet, or consensus, or what do we need there? Let me ask our county attorney.
Mr. Chairman, officially a motion would do it. We have in the past accepted consensus, but some affirmative showing of a majority of the Board of County Commissioners. Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. So, Commissioner Mann, are you offering a motion to put it on an agenda then?
Frankly, I just would like to register my objection to that opinion. I think a county commissioner could ask for an item to be put on an agenda, and then once it's on the agenda, we would vote to pass it or not pass it. But the elected official should have the right to bring up an issue and have it listened to by the colleagues here. So I don't know why I'm not allowed to do that. Staff brings up thousands of issues, and they're not elected. I don't understand why I can't say, let's have this as an agenda item. That's all I'm asking for. And then we'll take public testimony at that time, and we'll vote. The issue would be they'll speak to this later, I think the Lehigh Acres Community Council has passed a resolution unanimously asking us to take up the issue for discussion and a vote on whether or not to put this on a county-wide referendum as to having backyard chickens allowed in certain residential areas. And I'm just asking for that discussion to take place and let the public come in and be heard.
All right. Commissioners, any comments on that?
I believe we talked about this a couple of times in the last few years, and I think the issue was that, I understand why Lehigh Acres is here for that, but it's a countywide issue. It's not just a Lehigh Acres community issue. So when you make a land use change countywide, we talked about this in 16, and I think the prior board, Commissioner Mann, you were here in 2011, and I think you even voted against it then, it was countywide. It wasn't just for Lehigh Acres, and that was the downside based upon the county attorney. I think the item about the blue sheet was back to the administrative code of the Board of County Commissioners. The way things are brought forward by staff is under the administrative code procedurally.
Any other?
And maybe the county attorney can clarify that.
Yeah, I'll tell you just, my thought. I'm willing to support it getting on the agenda just because I want to have the ability to put things on the agenda someday if I ever have a good idea too. So, I mean, I'll support you just out of that spirit of it. But is Mr. County Attorney, do you have handy our administrative code or our charter or whatever would deal with that part of it?
Mr. Chairman, I'm looking at that specific citation now. I was not aware that the commissioner was going to raise this as an issue today, so if I could have a moment, I will look for the specific citation.
Sure.
Of
I
course.
mean, we could even cut to the chase. Does anybody really have a problem with it being an agenda item in the future? No? Okay, then I think it'll be on the agenda. You okay with that, Mr. County Manager?
Yes, sir. We'll work with Commissioner Mann to craft the motion that he's looking for you to consider.
Okay, very good.
And I thank you for that, but the folks from Lehigh that have made this request are aware that we need to do this countywide, and the request that they have put forth suggest a county-wide referendum. So they're not trying to single somebody out or just that, but they want the opportunity to come here and talk, and I appreciate your support for that idea.
Sure, very good. And I know we've got a lot of cards with folks who wanted to talk about the backyard chicken issue. Let's do this then, if it's okay, since we're not really officially voting on anything that you brought up, but Roger's got his direction. I'll still take you all at the end where it says public presentation of matters by citizens, okay, which will be in just a few minutes.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
That's all I have.
Commissioner Manning, you got anything today? No? Commissioner Sandelli, anything? Commissioner Pendergrass? Okay, I have one thing, Commissioners. I know many of us have gotten requests in Lee County to begin doing antibody testing. A lot of folks in Lee County are really interested in getting the antibody tests to know whether or not they had COVID-19 or had at least been exposed to it to the point where they've now got antibodies. Previous viruses, have shown that if you had antibodies, you would have some level of immunity to a disease. So I reached out to folks at Florida Gulf Coast University and actually received a proposal for them for a study. The study would be to understand the prevalence of COVID immunity in the Southwest Florida community, especially among groups such as healthcare workers. They believe it's critical for understanding how we should proceed with reopening our economy and our culture. They also say as we approach higher levels of immunity, we could be more confident that herd immunity would slow the spread of future infections. And so these would be important, data points as we start to talk about potential second waves and more reopenings. So their proposal would involve collecting antibody tests and inflammatory markers from a cross-section of the population of Lee County. Now they're looking for a random cross-section. They think they'd need to get about 4,000 people as a representative sample of Lee County. They sent me some preliminary cost proposals. They think it'll cost somewhere less than $500,000 to get all the testing supplies and to put the 4,000 samples together and the official report together. The results and the raw data would all come back to the county commission, but also they would have an opportunity to publish their study as well. And a really interesting subset of this study will also be, they're going to look at healthcare workers, and they're going to be able to look at the stress markers in healthcare workers and determine if the stress that they were under also played a role in how they handled those who were infected the COVID-19 infection. So that's very interesting too, because we've seen some very young, healthy healthcare workers who've had really rough a rough time handling the infection. So will be interesting for them for the full study to be taking place. So I guess my question or my request is that we would direct our staff to work with this group from Florida Gulf Coast University to prepare an agreement for this antibody study in Lee County and then bring it back to us to approve. And we would use the, I believe we've set aside 10 to 20 million of our CARES Act dollars for testing, and certainly I think we could use a portion of that to cover the cost of this study. So if everyone's okay with that, we could give that direction to the county manager. I see nodding heads all around. All right. Mr. County Manager, you guys will reach out to them then and work with them?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Commissioners. Appreciate you all. All right, let's move on to committee appointments. Commissioner Mann, do you have any?
Not.
Commissioner Manning, any appointments?
Yes, I have a reappointment of Misty Nichols to the Parks and Recreation Services Committee.
Second.
Okay, motion is from Commissioner Manning, second is from Commissioner Mann. Any discussion? Any objection? No objection, that motion carries. Commissioner Sandelli, you got any appointments? Commissioner Pendergrass? None. I have one reappointment. It's Timothy Hennessy to the Parks and Recreation Services Committee.
Move the item.
We have a motion from Commissioner Pendergrass. I need a second. Second from Commissioner Sandelli. Any discussion? Any objection? No objection. That motion carries unanimously. All right. Thank you very much, folks. All right. That concludes our committee appointments. Let's move on to county manager items. Mr. DeJoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would like to talk with you for just a moment, please, about the reopening of some of our county facilities. The governor, as we've spoken about last Friday, announced that the state of Florida was going to go to full phase 1 implementation, which also included, by the way, Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties for this phase. I'm going to ask Chris Brady to come to the podium for just a minute, please, and talk with you about some of the parks facilities and programs we are restarting, and then also to talk with you about the libraries as well. And Chris, would you please touch on Youth League Baseball as well? We're getting a lot of questions about that.
Sure, absolutely. Good morning, Commissioners. Christine Brady, Office of County Manager. I'm going to talk to you first about Parks and Recreation and some of the things that Jesse Lavender and his team are working through right now. But what we are proposing is the next phase of reopenings to start this Friday, May 22nd, and that will include all pools, playgrounds, pavilions, multi-purpose fields, fishing piers, and splash pads. Want to talk a little bit about some of those details. Specifically, pools will open on Friday, but will keep their hours of Tuesday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Indoor showers and changing rooms will not be available at this time, and staff will only allow 25 patrons into the pool for lap swim at the top of every hour for a period of 45 minutes. At the end of that 45 minutes, the pool will be cleared, and staff will then do cleaning and disinfecting to allow for the next group of individuals to come in for lap swim. This does not include aquatic aerobics at this time. Multi-purpose fields will be available for groups of 10 or less, and will be scheduled on a first-come, first-served basis. There will not be any league play at this time, and as Roger mentioned at the start of this, that while Jesse and his team are working with Youth League Baseball and other youth leagues to develop plans, at this time the governor's phase 1 reopening plan still only includes groups of 10 or less. So we are not having any league play at this time, but I do want to assure the board that our staff is working with those organizations to put plans into place that will adhere to CDC guidelines as well as the governor's executive order. Additional signage has been placed in all of our locations, and staff will continue to educate the public on social distancing and CDC guidelines. Recreation centers are not included in this opening, and I want to take a moment to explain that right now we are working on the county's plan for summer camp. We had already done pre-registration. That had started in February, well before the COVID process. So we already had 4,000 enrollments that were already prepaid. We are working on a plan to be able to continue to move forward with our summer camp program. Details will be forthcoming, but the recreation centers will be used for those summer camp programs, and so therefore we're not recommending to move forward with recreation centers. I'd like to switch over to the library next phase.
Well,
Go ahead, sir.
Before you move on, I just want to I don't usually admit this, but I have been under an immense amount of political pressure from a 9-year-old and a 3-year-old every day when I get home on the playgrounds.
Yes, sir.
So they will be reopening Friday then?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. I can tell them Daddy got it open.
Yeah, I could send them an email.
That would be great.
Daddy opened it for them.
Thank you.
So for the library, we are talking or proposing to open up our regional libraries on Tuesday, May 26th. That would include Cape Coral Library, East County Library, Fort Myers, Northwest, and South County Library. Again, that's Tuesday, May 26th, and those libraries will be at 25% capacity. Lakes Regional Library is not included at this time because the board had approved a construction project previously, and so we're going to keep that Lakes Library closed so that we can expedite the construction at that library, and hopefully looking to reopen that on somewhere the middle of June. Library hours would be Monday through Wednesday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., Thursday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., and we will continue to keep our other programs in place that we've already started, which is our contactless curbside pickup. So people will continue to be able to place materials on hold at all of our libraries, our regional as well as our community libraries, and be able to do drop-off of materials at all of our libraries, contactless service at all of our libraries. Our telephone, chat, email reference is still open. Talking books and books by mail are all open, and they are. The team is working on the virtual summer reading program, which is scheduled to begin June 1st. So with that, if you have any questions, yes, sir.
When you talk about the rec centers being closed for summer camps, okay, that's great. I think that's an appropriate place. What is a typical day for a summer camp? What time does it start? What time does it end? Ballpark.
So our summer camp hours are still looking, let me get to that proper page here, 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. is what we're looking to host.
If outside of those camp hours, that those centers were potentially available for others, but it sounds like you're pretty tight with the whole thing.
And understand that while we work to develop the programs, the focus will first be on the summer camps, and then we'll also see what other amenities we might be able to bring online, understanding that many of our staff right now are being reallocated to the CARES program, as well as with the summer camp, we do have the ratio of counselor to child has changed. So where it was 15-to-1, it is now 9-to-1. So we want to make sure that we have appropriate staffing and resources before we start that next consideration.
I want to understand what flexibility, if any, we have, and I realize there's a whole host of things. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Good. What questions do we have for our staff? Any?
Dave, Chris, did we miss anything? I think we good? Okay. Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I think it's fair to say with this, Mr. County Manager, we're getting Lee County open to the maximum extent
Yes, sir.
allowable under the full Phase 1.
Yes, sir.
That's
We are indeed. In fact, I got a question by email from someone about the vacation rentals. Want to know why hotels are being treated differently than vacation rentals. That's a good question. It simply points out the fact that the governor, in his most recent executive order, has treated hotels different from vacation rentals, and and he makes a distinction between different kinds of businesses. And so, as the county commission, you have rather finite authority over reopening Lee County, and it's mostly those services that you provide to the public, mostly. And then any additional authorities that the governor may pass along to local government would come in subsequent executive orders over the next couple of weeks. We're hopeful that he'll go to phase 2, hopefully.
Soon.
Yeah, soon, and then, yeah, hopefully.
Very good. All right, anything else for your county manager update then?
No, sir, thank you.
All right, very good. Let's move on to our county attorney items. Go ahead, Mr. County.
2 items for your consideration today. The first is a resolution to extend the burn ban under a declaration of state of local emergency.
All right, so we have a motion from Commissioner Manning. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Sandelli.
And the date is, what are these, 1 week or 2, how long are these?
7-day periods.
7-day period, thank you.
And this is the burn ban we're talking about here?
Yes, sir.
And on this one, you want to give us an update on the big burning that's going on in North Fort Myers right now? And it's kind of an area that is right on the border of Commissioner Mann and I's district. That thing's burning, but it's not affected by the burn ban, apparently?
No, sir. The burn ban prohibits voluntary open burning, if you will. That incident, as I understand it, although still under investigation, would be deemed accidental in nature, would not be covered by the burn ban.
Okay, all right, very good. All right, any other comments on the burn ban, state of local emergency? Does anybody wish to speak in public comment on that? Okay, we'll close public comment. Any further discussion? Any objection? No objection. That motion carries unanimously. All right, next one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next item is the 9th extension of the state of local emergency for the county's COVID response activities.
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Commissioner Manning, second from Commissioner Mann. Any questions for our staff on that? I had one. Just, Mr. DeGillet, sorry to put you on the spot. Any idea, at what level we'd get to where we would let the state of local emergency on the COVID-19 health crisis expire? You don't have to answer.
Yeah, Commissioner, I'd like to get that just a little bit of thought. I think, just sort of broad brushing it, when the governor issues what we think might be his final executive order, or when his executive orders really begin to water down restrictions,
Okay.
then I think that might be the time.
Okay, very good. All right, thanks. Any further questions for our staff? All right, anybody wish to speak in public comment on the COVID-19 state of local emergency? Okay, close that. Any objections to the motion on the floor? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. Very good. All right. Thank you, Mr. County Attorney. Anything else?
No, sir. Thank you.
All right. Let's move on to, at this time, matters of public presentation of matters by citizens. And we will move, let's do this. We have Howard Gold, who turned in a card for a non-agenda item, followed by Donnie Overholzer. Howard, are you here?
Richard, have you seen?
Yes.
I'm Howard Gold. I've been president of the South Fort Myers Little League for nearly 20 years at Ruttenberg, and am presently vice president. The item of allowing team practices and games seems to keep getting kind of kicked down the highway. And in light of everything else that seems to be open and being encouraged, Donnie, who represents Fort Myers American, and me from South Fort Myers, which is at the county park, Ruttenberg, just can't seem to quite understand why organized youth baseball is not being allowed. It's been proven that kids do better with structure and with some regulation in their lives as opposed to none. And we got halfway through our season, had spring break, which then lapped into the shutdown. And we're anxious to see if we could get the kids back playing with several common sense rules and regulations, which Donnie is prepared. I'll let him review, but there's never more than 11, 12, 13 kids on a field at the same time. Parents can be lined up along the outfield fences and the side fences, and I would say attendance at a typical game is about 75 people, which would be spread out throughout the perimeter of a field. Bleachers would be closed, and we believe we can play games safely.
Thanks, Mr. Gold. Appreciate your
Okay.
comments this morning. Okay, let's call Donnie Overholzer. Morning.
Okay. It's time, Don Overholzer for the record. Since March 13th of this year, our local baseball and softball programs have been suspended, of course, with good cause. But we've been 9 weeks now that play has been non-existent in team practices. This happened at the very beginning of the season for most programs, and in my league's case, we literally had 1 weekend before we had to stop because of the virus. Normally at this time of the year, we would be winding down at the end of the school year as the end of the school year approaches and summer vacations would begin. But now we are forced to consider playing into the summer with the idea that to many families out of work, vacations may not be affordable this year, and many vacation spots across the country will be closed, so we could foreseeably go into June where we normally wouldn't. But we cannot play until our local governments decide it's time to start moving into the next phase. We have been, for the last 3 weeks, been scheduling use of the fields to not only members of our league, but of our community. In my case, at my complex, we've scheduled in the last 3 weeks since we got the ability to do that over 400 reservations for families and for many activities, anywhere from baseball and softball to a gender reveal I had on Saturday. So people are getting out and making use of the complex. We have strictly adhered to all the guidelines given to us by the county and the city, which were decided at that meeting about keeping the groups to 10 and no organized games or team practices. But now, overwhelmingly, families want to get back on the field and practice and play games and return to as much normalcy as we can. I will admit that some families will not return, and that's a personal choice they will make, but I can attest that the vast majority of calls and emails that I get are about wanting to return to the field. We have drawn up ideas for many measures we feel will maintain safe distancing and provide a clean and safe environment. I have copies that I would like to leave with Mr. Desjardins that he could pass out to the council people of some things that we think that we collectively as a group of the different leagues think that we could do in the parks that would solve any issues about safe distancing and sanitation and things like that. Financially, this is, of course, I mentioned this before, has been a disaster to many local recreational youth and softball programs. We accept all players regardless of ability or financial means. And being that this is baseball's primary season, we have lost a lot of money on both from something nonprofits like ours can ill afford. Sponsors who cannot now pay because their business has been shut down. We've lost 9 to 10 weeks of concession sales. We've lost, every league has lost their fundraiser, which raises a considerable amount of money to run the organization. So if we don't get back on the field pretty soon, there's going to be a lot of leagues that are going to be in big trouble, and some are going to fold. I mean, there's just no getting around it. It's like some businesses are never going to open again. Maybe some of these youth organizations that are serving now, and I'm talking about baseball and softball, 7,000 kids in Lee County may not exist after this is all said and done. In closing, I'd like to say we need to get back playing as soon as possible to not only have that normalcy in a safe manner. We often think about the level of stress on the adults, but believe me, our children are suffering from that same stress, and most are not old enough to deal with it. So please, let's play ball.
Thanks, Donnie. All right, very good. Our next card, anyways, that I have is Joe Gallagher. Mr. Gallagher, you got it? Okay, thank you very much. Elliot Walker. Morning. And then after Mr. Walker, I have another card for Jasmine Miller. Do you want to talk? Oh, you already spoke? Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
It is.
All right. So then after Elliot Walker, I'll take Vladimir Garay. Morning.
Morning. My name is Elliot Walker.
Go ahead and start there.
I just want to thank God, first of all, for allowing me this opportunity to present myself in front of you. I'm a volunteer advocate, spokesperson for the homeless and the mentally impaired here in Lee County, mainly Fort Myers. I've been working around the homeless for like 20-something years now, from Pennsylvania to Florida. And first of all, I love Lee County. I love Fort Myers, just to let you guys know that. But I feel like there is no better person or people to police the homeless but the people who are out there every day. with the homeless, and which includes me. And I have met some, good people since I've been here that showed me around and showed me a lot of places, Willie Joe and Jasmine. We're out there every day on the streets. We know what's going on, otherwise known as boots to the ground. As far as this CARES Act is concerned, where it pertains to the homeless, my request to you, commissioners, is to allow, folks like us who are out here every day to be a part of this grant, in dealing with the homeless. They know us, we know them. And so my request is for you to see if you can create a position, for us three with this grant so that we can get to the people as far as giving out the sanitary kits and whatever else is necessary, making sure that these people get to silence care in places like this. So that's my request to you. Thank you.
Mr. Walker, thanks for your comments this morning. Yes, sir. Appreciate it. All right, Vladimir? Yeah, there you go. And then after that will be Heather Skoutakis. I got it right this time? All right. I'll try better. Good morning, sir. How you doing?
Good morning, commissioners. Good morning, audience. Good morning to all the people who are watching us on TV or online. It's been one more time an honor or a privilege to stay in front of you guys. I really never had the opportunity, and I really thank you for allowing me to express myself when I became a homeless a few months ago. Last Tuesday, we were talking about the human service allocation planning, and we talk about housing. I saw on the screen 2.8 million for the housing health that the Lee County is gonna have access. And my concern is the homeless, like the past speaker said, the homeless community. You never know what's a homeless until you are in their shoes, And I just want to talk to you about the diversity of the groups that we have in the homeless community. We have the handicaps, which is my priority. That's the reason why I picked the first group. The people that we have out there on the streets having trouble walking. They've been rejected for the associations because of this situation and being afraid of being sued just in case of an accident. Happens in the facility. Number two, our veterans that are retired. For those people who have mental issues, and I just want to mention Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. The next group, my next group is the people who are unemployed, like because of the situation that we're facing. For those who are waiting on the benefits, and families that are homeless, homeless with their families with pets, homeless with families and no pets. So we have the druggies, the alcohol, the smokers, and we have also the other group that are like me, I'm not a smoker. We have the LGBT community like me, I belong to that group, and it's hard, the people around me, being a homeless, is hard to deal with me. And the Latinos like me, for the illegal residents that work in the field or in the city, for those who are non-English speakers, for those who are in transitional recovery, for those who are, they have the benefits that they decide to become a homeless because they want to save their money for different reasons and purposes. So my prayer is that the Holy Spirit will help you guys taking the decisions that you need to take. The Holy Spirit, the Paraclete, the Comforter, the best helper, is our best help. I thank you so much for your time, and God bless you. I really thank you for this sacrifice and the time you're doing for the community and for myself. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. All right, let's call up Heather Skoutakis. All right, you're going to say it right for me. And then Tyler Woodby will be after her.
Hi, good morning, Heather Skoutakis.
Heather Skoutakis.
Very close.
All right, I won't
Depends
pronounce.
on if you're Greek or not, I guess.
Yeah, I got you.
All right, good morning. Thank you for listening to me. I wanted to address the backyard chicken issue. I actually am representing the group called Backyard Chickens of Lee County. It's called Backyard Chickens of Lee County because we want to legalize backyard chickens in all of Lee County. We have a petition of support of that here, and I plan to give that to you today. Today, I'm here to ask the Board of County Commissioners to update the very out-of-date land use code that regards chickens as livestock animals only. Not only is it outdated according to today's standards, as cities, towns, and counties across the United States have updated their codes to reclassify chickens as backyard chickens in urban areas, overly restrictive zoning regulations infringe on the rights of property owners and should be considered government overreach. Property owners should have the right to produce their own food on their own properties in order to achieve food security. We have nuisance laws that would prohibit overly noisy and smelly situations already, so there's no reason not to do this. We're aware that the land use code is amended on a biannual basis in order to correct and update and amend any out-of-date or unnecessary codes. As agricultural lands diminish to give way to more urban development, we're facing an important issue. And that is, how are we going to continue to feed the growing population? We know we can't depend on grocery stores and restaurants to provide all of our food. So after reading the Lee plan and seeing that Lee is planned to fully be built out by 2030, yet there's nothing in the plan regarding how Lee County is planning to feed this growing population, we believe this needs to be addressed and not overlooked, as development is not more important than the people who own the properties here. Even the state of Florida has developed programs in regards to the shrinking agricultural land to help communities across Florida introduce urban agriculture in order to help with food supply and demand. So the question is, do deed-restricted communities' opinions really outweigh the rights of property owners not constrained by them? I know that I don't live in a deed-restricted community specifically because I don't want to be ruled by their bylaws. So with that, I ask the land use code to be amended or reclassify chickens as backyard laying hens to afford our property owners the right to food security. And I have my petition here to
Go ahead and put it with the clerk right there, if you could. Thank you very much.
that shows countywide support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tyler Woodby, followed by Chuck Edwards. Morning.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me the chance to speak. Before this COVID-19 outbreak, regionalism has already been making a comeback among the population in the United States. But this COVID-19 outbreak has increased the trend towards regionalism, thus meaning people would want to close the gaps between themselves and their food source. I'm here in mostly support for backyard chickens. However, sustainability in Lee County is a much larger issue, and there's a lot that needs to be done. Short, sweet, to the point. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, sir. All right, Chuck Edwards, followed by Robert Berman.
Thank you, Commissioners. You've seen me multiple times on this same issue, and I come as president of the Lehigh Acres Community Council, an organization that's been around for 52 years. And I want to thank you guys, especially Commissioner Mann, for making sure this goes on the agenda. The group that's been here speaking here lately is it's like a collaboration of a bunch of different groups. Everybody has come together because of the COVID-19 issue, and it's time to let the citizens decide what's in our own best interest. At our meetings over the past couple of years, the community council meetings, this issue has come up quite a bit with very, very little dissent. And lately I've been overwhelmed with comments and messages to work harder on getting this item on the agenda. By putting this on the ballot, it takes it out of your hands and puts it in the citizens' hands where it belongs to decide this once and for all. This issue has been going on since 2011. The people in these committees and in these groups have done so much research on this locally, nationally. There is so much overwhelming support for this nationwide, and as you can see from the thickness of that petition that she just brought in, there's quite a bit of support of it in the county. I believe that if it goes on the ballot, then you guys, it takes it out of your hands and lets the people that live here decide what we want to do in our own backyards. I appreciate it very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Let's call Robert Berman, followed by Willie Joe Schott-Miller.
Good morning.
My name is Robert Berman. I'm a resident of Lehigh Acres, and good morning to the Lee County Commission Board. We are at a crossroad in our country. We are sick. The COVID-19 has showed us that. One of the ways we can heal ourselves is by allowing the backyard chicken. In case of food shortages, people can have eggs. You can say to your neighbor, hey, I don't have much, but I have eggs. I have chickens. I can give you some of that. We are in the middle of a pandemic. The food supply is being depleted as you speak. We are shipping food all around the world here. So we don't really have any say on how the meat is grown, what we're eating, because everybody wants chicken. Everybody wants to eat here, right? Just as Americans, we should be allowed to produce our own food. Some backyard chickens aren't going to destroy my neighbor's property value, and in fact, it will raise the property values because we are helping ourselves now. A little less reliance on China, a little more reliance on ourselves. And that's really where we're at. And this is not, so in 6 months, we don't even know if we're going to be able to put food on our tables. So why not give these residents a chance to fight for themselves and let them have their chickens? So they can say, hey, I don't have anything, but hey, I have some chicken meat. I have some vegetables. I have some eggs that you could have. And that's really where we're at. I'm actually from New York, obviously. We're not big farmers in New York. I had a small coop because they allowed it. And actually, when I sold my house, the property value went up because people were like, oh, there's a coop and yada, 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 and you get the whole, how that goes. I'm fighting for my neighbors. I'm fighting for Lehigh, and I'm fighting for you guys. I'm up here. I don't want to be here, to be honest with you. But we have to make this right. We have to put a wrong where there's, put a right where there's wrong. And we can't keep relying on China to process 78% of our food. And that's basically what they're doing. We grow it here, they get a USDA stamp, it gets shipped to China, processed, and sent back. And in order to do that, they have to put all kinds of stuff in our food to make it go through that distance. And these are facts, ladies and gentlemen. The Obama administration okayed it. China was great, we were best friends. We're not best friends anymore. We have to protect ourselves as Americans. One of the ways we can do it is let the residents have their chicken. Let them have some, with restriction. I don't want roosters. I don't want people crowing in my yard. I don't want any of that. I just want to be able to feed my family and maybe feed my neighbor if I can. And that's what I have to say. Thank you.
All right, let's do Willie Joe Shopmiller. And then David Gallagher, I got a card for you. Do you want to speak again? Or you do? Okay, very good.
I too would like to praise the work of the EMTs. I've witnessed their work. They got gifted their hands. A young lady that's an EMT once said that I met her years ago, and now she's just graduated, that she wanted to help save lives. And she did that Sunday at the bus station. A young guy OD'd, and he was dead, and through God's hands, through theirs, a young man awoke. So I'd like to thank the EMTs too. And about the farming, I agree, we need to do more back at the old-fashioned way of bartering and working together. But to the issue of the homelessness, and that there needs to be a place always. We got wetlands for animals. We've got places for animals to go. We need emergency places in an emergency for people to go. Let's say the house burned down, whatever, you're new to a town, somebody stole your money. There always needs to be that refuge to go to that is patrolled by the police. I mean, the library, people sleeping? No, we need a place to be. Also, affordable housing for people. We've got several places that could be rehab, partnering with Homes for Habitat, or getting retired people to teach these young fellows, and maybe we'll get some of these young people off the drugs and that, giving them hope. So I would like to thank you for all for what you're doing. I heard when I came in that we're working to serve this community. I believe some of you are. I really do. I know that in the past code enforcement and that haven't. I've lost everything I've had, but life goes on, and if I had a good attorney, it's not just to sue the city for me, it's to sue the city to get human needs for the people. And I'm still in the process of looking into that. So it's to get somebody to work with us to have a place that's always going to be there for the people of this area. Because it could happen to anybody. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments this morning. And David Gallagher.
Yeah, I'll make this really brief. And it is freezing in here. Next time I'll wear a suit. I just want to, I guess, thank you guys, because you are doing a terrific job. I mean, I wonder how all the other counties in Florida is spending their care money. And I wonder if they're focusing like you guys are on us. Because that's, to me, that's amazing that, you know, you care enough about. I know you're the commissioners and that's great, but in comparison to everybody else, I'm just wondering, you know, if everybody else is doing the same thing, or are you guys kind of, maybe you should be the model, and maybe other counties should kind of follow how you guys are addressing this. And of course, there's going to be some issues. And I'm a martial artist, so I'm gonna see the in between lines, right? That's how martial artists are. So I just wanted to really just thank you, because I think you're doing a great job. And the barber thing, it's an independent contract. I am curious how that fits in there, because they're independent from the business. So like my business, I have an employee kind of thing, but if I was hiring an independent contract, then they're independent from me if I'm following the law. They're totally independent. So they should be able to get unemployment if that falls in the category. And last thing I want to say is, so I brought in just before the craziness happened, I brought in a new girl to replace my secretary. And then all this happened, and she's got 3 kids. She's got a 2-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 3-year-old. And of course, I'm not open, so she has no income now, and her husband was laid off, and he now just been rehired. But the whole thing is, it's like the category of helping. She's got 3 kids, so she can't work because the schools are closed. So I think that's a really great initiative to get people like her some money in her pocket, and someone like me that can reinitiate that. So again, thank you. Appreciate it. Oh, one more question. You mentioned, I think I've got a couple seconds. You mentioned something, Mr. Pendergraph, about I think there's a group, an independent. The gentleman last week spoke about transparency, and you mentioned that there was a group. I'd like to know how to get on that group.
Excellent.
Okay.
Very good. All right, thanks, David. All right, anybody else, raise your hand if you'd like to speak in public comment. Oh, one last speaker. All right.
Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you again for your services. Thank you for allowing us to speak on our behalf, on the behalf of our neighbors and friends and family and so on. I just wanted to address and state that I did get a response from DOT in regards to paving our roads. And right now, May 18, it says something about procurement department, and that they will proceed with the issue. And the contract has 180 days to complete the $2 million in paving work that is part of this project. And of course, I've been communicating prior to coming here to address this situation. Dirk and Jeremy has been very good at communicating and responding to our requests, and I just wanted to say thank you. So our road is getting paved. I don't know when. They said they was going to start the process, but I'm just glad to know that you guys heard us, and thank you.
Thank you. Happy to help. Thank you. All right, well, that'll close public comment, and I don't see any other business before us, so at this time, we are adjourned.